Taco Tuesday, Taco Tuesday. Get your taco on. It's Taco Tuesday. Get your taco on. Go, 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 go. What is going on with Rumble? Okay, there we go. Let's do it. Doobie-doobie-doo.
I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Tuesday, guys. Taco Tuesday, I like to call it. I love my tacos. Welcome to Sab's podcast. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sab's podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays and Fridays, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and hopefully Rumble. I've been having some technical difficulties with Rumble today. I don't know what's going on, but hopefully it's all set over there as well. But welcome back, guys. We got a lot of things to discuss tonight. We will do call in tonight, so don't miss that. But I think before I get into the stories, I do want to go ahead and give you an update. I've gotten a lot of emails, so I figured it's just best to just answer this on here instead of answering all these individual emails. I got a lot going on right now. We have the Boston chapter event this Saturday, so I've got some scrambling going on with that. But I do want to go ahead and address this because I have received so many emails about it. So some of you know, I don't think everyone knows, but some of you do know that Friday, I actually had to have a surgical procedure. It was an outpatient procedure, but I did have to go under. So they did have to give me anesthesia, etc. So last month, and I didn't tell you guys about this at the time because I was just very, I think, stressed and anxious about it. Last month, actually, during my routine physical with my doctor, she was concerned that there could be some type of malignancy. And the only way that they were actually able to prove that it wasn't is to have a tissue sample, right? So they had to put me under for this. So for about a little over a month, I knew this day was coming, and I just, with everything else going on, the traveling and the event for the Boston chapter and everything, like I've been crazy busy and trying to keep myself busy to not really think about it, just keeping it real. But I knew that this day was coming, and I've been really stressed out about it. So Friday morning, I did have the procedure, and that went really well. I basically rested for most of the weekend. I was pretty groggy, as you can imagine. I did get my test results back today. So I want to start with some good news. The good news is that I am clear. There's no malignancy. So I do want to share that with you because I know a lot of you did reach out and ask how everything was going. So I don't want you to be concerned. So that is really good news. And I'm glad to share that news because I was very scared. That being said, one thing that I really do want to address is that I think what people have to understand is that the only reason that I was even able to have that procedure is because I have health insurance, and the health insurance company paid for the procedure. The reality is that if I did not have health insurance, I would have never been able to pay for that procedure. We're talking thousands of dollars if I didn't have health insurance. And it's not just the procedure itself. You also get charged for the anesthesia. You're also charged for, I guess, what they consider to be a hospital bed. I felt like it was a cot, but whatever. You get charged for that. They also charge you for the lab testing, the lab results. So there's that too. There's all these different things that they bill you for. So I was fortunate that I had health insurance that would actually cover the procedure in the first place. The reality is thousands of people in this country don't have health insurance. And there was a time in my life when I was waiting tables where I did not have health insurance because the restaurants that I worked at didn't offer us health insurance. What I want people to grasp is that not everyone is so lucky. Not everyone is so lucky or fortunate to even have the doctor's visit that I had that called for the testing in the first place, then alone to have the health insurance to cover the procedure. And this is why I continue to stress that everybody needs to have health insurance in this country. Because the thing is, some of these diseases that people do acquire in this country is preventable. It's preventable if you can get preventative testing. It's preventable, but sometimes based on diet, based on your health. Some things are genetic. But the thing is, if you don't have health insurance and you're not able to pay for those doctor visits, or you're not even able to pay for a physical, you're lost. Then by the time you realize that something is wrong, it's usually when you have symptoms. And that by that time, for some people, it's already too late. So we can't stop talking about the importance of people having health insurance in this country. 10 years ago, this would have been a different situation because I wouldn't have had health insurance. So I did want to start off with that good news because I know a lot of you did reach out and you were worried. But I do want to reach out and let you know the good news is my results did come back negative. So I'm really excited to share that. And it's nice to get some good news. And now I can stop stressing as I have been for the past month. So welcome, guys. I did want to go ahead and share that. And I do want to make sure I'm going to shout out patrons. We're going to jump right in because there is a lot to cover tonight. And we do have call in tonight as well. So I want to go ahead and start off by shouting out Sabby patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters, Sabbies, and of course, members. All of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. And I want to give a shout out to a new Sabby patron. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Kalel. Welcome, welcome, and thank you guys. Yeah, it's a very important thing that people need to be able to get the healthcare treatments that they need in this country. And I just realized I forgot to log into the thing. So here we go. All right. So what are we discussing tonight? So, oh my God, let me go ahead and share this thumbnail. It's been a crazy week, guys. There was another story I wanted to cover as well. I'm not going to be able to cover that until Thursday. That's the Van Jones story, just because I have so much to cover tonight. But tonight we are discussing Aaron Mate removed. Yikes. They kicked Aaron Mate off the train. Kicked him off the train. There was a movie called Throw Mama from the Train. They kicked Aaron off the train. We're going to get into that. We're also going to discuss Cenk Uygur versus Rabbi Shmuley. Interesting debate between those two on Piers Morgan's show. Oh my God. We're going to get into that. That's over Israel and Gaza. We're also going to discuss Abby Martin and Roger Waters on Gaza. Very important conversation there between those two, especially considering, if you remember, Roger Waters was censored and smeared earlier this year. And we're also going to discuss this situation that is unraveling with Eric Adams. Eric Adams is busted, son. Busted. This is really not good. Yikes. Yikes, yikes, yikes. And I also have to make sure I also want to touch on that recent announcement in reference to Uber and Lyft and back pay for the drivers. And we'll finish up Wyoming as well. So like I said, we got a lot to discuss. So let's jump right in. I want to get started with Eric Adams. So when Eric Adams announced that he was running for mayor of New York City, I was heavily opposed to it. I did not think that Eric Adams would be good for New York City, having lived in New York City. And one of the things that I predicted that he would do, he has done, and that is ramp up the police state. I predicted he would do that. I predicted he would give the NYPD more funding. He has done that. He's criminalizing homeless people in New York City. He's become everything that I said that he would become as mayor. Well, apparently, Eric Adams is now under investigation, and it actually goes back to that campaign. Let's go ahead and get into this article, and then we'll jump into the video. FBI examining whether Eric Adams cleared red tape for the Turkish government. Oh, boy. Oh, snap. We're going to get into this. Federal authorities are investigating whether Mayor Eric Adams, weeks before his election 2 years ago, pressured the New York Fire Department officials to sign off on the Turkish government's new high-rise consulate in Manhattan, despite safety concerns with the building. 3 people with the knowledge of the matter said. So obviously, this is a building that had safety issues, and they're saying that Eric Adams basically pressured the NYFD to sign off on this. After winning the Democratic mayoral primary in July, Mr. Adams contacted the fire commissioner, Daniel A. Negro, interesting name, in late summer 2021 and urged him to allow the Turkish government to occupy the building at least on a temporary basis. The building had yet to open because the building at least on a, oh, whoops, I said that right. The building had yet to open because fire officials had cited safety issues and declined to sign off on its occupancy, the people said. I want to tell you something about fire inspections. New York and Boston, I've noticed this. Sometimes certain landlords or developers, they will try to skate by like the fire inspections. Now in Boston, by law, you're supposed to have a fire inspection of at least the residential buildings once a year. You're supposed to, but not everybody does it. Sometimes I've had a landlord before that never did it. I've had landlords that did do it. But if you want someone to come for you in reference to real estate and not handling things properly, the fire department, they're not the ones. They do not play around. The unusual intervention by Mayor Adams is being examined as part of a broader public corruption investigation by the FBI and federal prosecutors in Manhattan that led to the seizure of the mayor's electronic devices by federal agents early last week. The FBI has been asking top fire department officials about Mr. Adams' role in the matter since the spring. Mr. Adams' intervention paved the way for the Turkish president, whose fondness for massive building projects was well known in Turkey, to preside over the grand opening of a 300 million 35-story tower on his September 2021 visit to New York for the UN General Assembly. Despite numerous flaws in its fire safety system, according to people familiar with the matter in city records, the skyscraper in the center of New York City reflected Turkey's increased power. Now, that was coming from the Turkish president. The federal criminal inquiry has focused, at least in part, on whether Mr. Adams' 2021 campaign conspired with the Turkish government, including its consulate general in New York, to illegally funnel foreign money into its coffers, according to a search warrant obtained by the New York Times for an FBI search this month of the home of the mayor's chief fundraiser. This is not good. So here you have Mayor Adams. Looks like he's illegally working with the foreign entity. Now, I'm waiting to see if Democrat politicians in New York are going to call this out. Because you know how people protect their party. Now, I want to go to this clip from CNN where they discuss this matter again. Eric Adams, his devices, electronic devices, have been seized. They will be reviewed. I sincerely hope for his sake there's nothing on those devices, like any emails, I don't know, that will point to his behavior and his involvement with this. But my question is, if he is guilty, and I don't trust Eric Adams, so I wouldn't be surprised if he is, he's corrupt. But if he is guilty, what happens in reference to his mayor seat in New York City? Let's go ahead and get into this clip here from CNN as they discuss this matter as well.
Breaking news just in, with a source confirming to CNN that the FBI has seized New York City Mayor Eric Adams' phones and an iPad of his in part of its federal corruption investigation. All of this is coming mere days after his chief campaign fundraiser had her home raided by FBI agents as well. I want to bring in CNN's Polo Sandoval, who is covering all of this. This is a really dramatic escalation of this probe.
Dramatic, and I can't say it enough, significant escalation and a significant development in this investigation, as we've now learned, according to reporting from our colleague Kara Scannell, citing a source, a person familiar with this ongoing investigation, that New York City Mayor Eric Adams' phone and also an iPad seized by federal investigators as they continue to probe that fundraising investigation, as you just mentioned a short while ago. I want to get straight to what we have heard directly from Mayor Adams himself. In a statement that was released to CNN by his campaign attorney spokesperson, Boyd Johnson, in fact, we have that. We're able to put that up on the screen so you can follow along here, as they have responded to this latest news, saying, as a former member of law enforcement, I expect all members of my staff to follow the law and fully cooperate with any sort of investigation, and I will continue to do exactly that. Quote, I have nothing to hide. Again, these are the words of Mayor Eric Adams through a spokesperson. And as you mentioned, this development coming on the heels of what we just recently learned in the FBI raid of New York City Mayor Adams's chief fundraiser, as they continue to look determine whether or not his 2021 campaign fundraising potentially received some of these foreign funds with through a Brooklyn-based construction company to potentially funnel foreign money into his campaign. So a lot of...
Let me pause here for just a second. So how is this any different from the accusation against Joe Biden accepting foreign money? So we're seeing a lot of corruption being exposed, whether it's the Democratic Party, whether it's the Republican Party. This year, we're seeing a lot of that. And another thing that I want to point out, I want to be very clear. Eric Adams is a former NYPD officer, former police officer. Now, some people will look at this and they'll say, oh, come on, he didn't break the law. He used to be a cop. I would look at that and say, he used to be a cop. He probably broke the law. Police officers also corrupt. Let's continue.
Questions right now about what the mayor did know or potentially did not know as this latest development comes to light. Kayla.
Yeah, and I mean, the New York Times says that essentially the FBI agents approached him on the street, and that's when they notified him that they had this court-ordered subpoena warrant to get his phones, to get his iPad, that they returned them a few days later, the New York Times says. But all of this is part of that wide-ranging investigation. Clearly, I mean, it's a lot more serious than we thought. He's a former member of law enforcement, as you noted there, but he's saying that he still is maintaining he didn't do anything wrong, that he's not accused of anything.
He's still.
Did you hear what Caitlin just said? He's a former member of law enforcement. To that I say, so what, Caitlin? Former employees of law enforcement can't be corrupt. Current employees of law enforcement can't be corrupt. We have corrupt presidents. Joe Biden is corrupt. Donald Trump is corrupt. Barack Obama is corrupt. Bill Clinton is corrupt. George W. Bush is corrupt. What are you talking about? Just because someone has a certain position or they hold a certain position, we should basically dismiss the fact that they could be involved in any type of corruption. This is too much.
Maintains his innocence, and we have heard him repeat. We have heard from him a couple of times already, especially after that latest development. At least what came to light in the last few days, and that scene that's laid out in that New York Times reporting, it really is just incredible. This idea of federal agents approaching the mayor of America's largest city and then requesting to get their hands on these documents. So again, it cannot be said enough, and we can't underscore it enough. This is a significant development with a lot more to come.
And so what if
not only that, but they approached him on the street. Have you guys ever seen like those TV shows or movies where there's a scene where someone's being served papers like, you know, are you so-and-so? Who wants to know? You've been served. You ever seen that when they approach people on the street? I always thought like that just happened like in the movies or TV shows. Apparently, no, they do this in real life as well, because Eric Adams was approached on the street.
happened, it was November 2nd, I believe, that was when his chief fundraiser, who's young, she's only 25 years old, I believe, had her home searched by the FBI. They took some devices there. What's at the heart of this investigation that we do know? So
what we can say is that law enforcement officials were familiar with the search warrants and previously told CNN that the investigators, they're specifically looking into evidence that foreign nationals who are actually barred from making any campaign contributions may have, in essence, bundled some of these donations going into New York's Turkish American communities and then getting U.S. citizens of Turkish origin, the basically act as straw contributors. Now we have reached out to various stakeholders in this investigation, waiting to hear back.
I want to make the connection here between this situation with Eric Adams and corporate money in electoral politics. You see, if we had free public financing of elections in this country, this wouldn't even be an issue. That's not to excuse Eric Adams, but that's how you could weed out the corruption in electoral politics. Get rid of the corporate money and just make public elections free. Free financing of it. Just something to point out.
Hello, Sandoval, a dramatic escalation. Thank you for that reporting. Our panel is here with me. And Emily, obviously you are a well-sourced New York reporter. I mean, this is the first time that we've seen this probe get this close and directly touch the mayor.
Exactly. And the New York Times in its reporting calls it a dramatic escalation of this investigation into the mayor's campaign. And as you said earlier this week, he was approached by federal agents who asked his security detail to step aside and seized his electronic devices. This happened just a couple days after his chief fundraiser's home in Brooklyn was raided and documents were taken pertaining to his campaign and its fundraising.
And have we seen Mayor Adams this week? I mean, has he indicated publicly at all that this happened?
He didn't. This happened earlier this week, I believe on Monday, according to the reporting. He had no public events on Tuesday, just closed-door meetings and calls, his team told me, as usual. And then he did his weekly off-topic news conference, addressing reporters in the press corps on Wednesday, taking questions on every topic that we would want to ask, and said nothing about this incident.
That's really remarkable. I mean, we have heard from him.
No, it's not remarkable, Caitlin. So she told Caitlin, she said, yeah, he said nothing about this incident. And Caitlin goes, that's really remarkable. No, it's not. Usually, especially if you're guilty of something, whether you're a politician or not, you're going to try to hide that or keep that low as long as you can, right? Until it's exposed. You're going to try to keep that undercover and keep it hush. It's not a remarkable thing, Caitlin.
Now he's putting out a statement saying that he feels like he has nothing to hide. And one thing he said, Joe, he said, quote, I expect all members of my staff to follow the law. it's not just his staff. He is also himself now directly involved in this. We don't know that he's done anything wrong, but certainly this is very close to him.
Well, look, I think that we should caution and remind people that everyone is innocent until proven guilty. A probe is not necessarily indicative of any guilt.
Yeah.
But I do think that the actions of the president or the mayor, absent of his words, are a little bit different. So if you look at what happened, he basically turning around from D.C. To basically get home, as they say in politics, to figure out what they're going to do. It appears he may have known that this was coming, or there was some escalation was coming. So look, we have to let the facts bear out wherever they go. But I do think that certainly it's troubling when you have the mayor of New York City in the midst of a migrant crisis, in the midst of an economic crisis, suddenly have to worry about his own fiscal house of order, so to speak.
Yeah.
That would be Eric Adams' fault, though. It's Eric Adams' fault that he has to worry about this issue, not like that's not on anyone else. That's on him. And I'm pretty sure, like I said, if they seized his phone and his iPad, they had enough information to work with to do that. So it does not look good for Eric Adams. And there goes his chances of running for president. At one point, he was entertaining that. So there goes those chances of him running for a higher office. But there have been other corrupt mayors in this country. We have to remember Marion Barry from D.C. Remember that whole debacle. He was arrested, drug charges, etc. But then he got out of jail, and then people reelected him in D.C. even after that. So this is not anything new. I don't know why they're trying to make it sound like this is shocking or whatever, because it's the mayor of the largest city, et cetera. These things do happen. Like I said, a lot of politicians are corrupt.
Well, and potentially criminal exposure. I mean, Michael, the day that his campaign fundraiser, the chief campaign fundraiser's house was raided, that was the day he was supposed to go to Washington. He's supposed to have all these meetings at the White House. He instead canceled those. How big of a concern is this for Democrats here? And of course, innocent until proven guilty, obviously. He hasn't been charged or accused of anything. How big of a concern is this, though?
Well,
I think that's funny that Eric Adams was supposed to actually have a meeting at the White House with Joe Biden. So it would have been two criminals at a table. Start off the joke with two criminals walk into the White House. What are their roles and positions in the United States? One is the president, one is the mayor.
with little information we have, I don't want to write the guy's political obituary, but his statement was strong. It seems confident that he, at least maybe he might not even know he's committed a crime himself.
Get out of here. Let me tell you something about Michael, okay? Michael LaRosa, he was on Rising. I was on a segment of Rising with this guy, and he was trying to make excuses for Joe Biden and propping up Joe Biden, et cetera. So you got to know where he comes from. Former press secretary of First Lady Joe Biden, right? So that was his title. So now this guy is trying to say maybe Eric Adams didn't realize what he did was a crime. He was a cop, Michael. Like, this is Michael. He comes in to run cover for the Democratic Party. This man was a police officer. Give me a break. You think he didn't know that? Especially as mayor? Oh, man.
So what I would advise the team over there would be to tell everything you know, tell it early, and tell it yourself. Because the last thing you want is drip, drip, drip of information coming out like we've seen with other politicians.
Yeah, I mean, it's a major concern. How does he typically respond to, I mean, you've seen the mayor, he has a lot of bravado. We've interviewed him multiple times here at CNN. How has he been responding as these developments have slowly been happening in this investigation?
Well, he's been insistent and consistent in that he's cooperating with the probe, that he himself, as a retired NYPD captain, is a law enforcement official and will help law enforcement in turn. And he maintains that he hasn't been charged, he hasn't been accused of wrongdoing, which is true, nor has Brianna Suggs, his chief fundraiser, who's 25 years old, in charge of the millions that are poured into his campaign. But the allegations, as uncovered by the New York Times, that obtained part of that search warrant are pretty serious. The campaign is under investigation, apparently, for allegedly conspiring with the Turkish government to funnel illegal donations into his campaign. It is not legal to take foreign contributions if you're an American politician. And New York City has a very generous matching funds program. And if you leverage some of the donations locally the right way, you can get more public financing dollars for your campaign.
Breaking news.
Of course, it's not legal to take money from foreign entities for a campaign, and it's really funny because I felt like towards the end of that statement, she was offering advice to Eric Adams or whatever. As if Eric Adams doesn't know this. Eric Adams knows this. Like when you run for office, all of this information, the rules, the procedures, what you're allowed to do in reference to donations and all of those things, all of that is explained to you as a candidate. Like he knows this. Mayor Adams knows this, but that's CNN again trying to run cover for the Democratic Party, but it does not look good for Eric. It does not look good. Oh my God. The Oracle said this is happening because he criticized the Biden administration's handling of the immigration problem. Oh, he did do that. That's right. That's probably what the meeting was. The meeting that he was supposed to attend at the White House with Joe Biden. That's probably what that meeting was about the immigration issue. Delthea says, you don't have to blackmail Adams. He bribes real easy. Thank you so much, Sean, for the super sticker. Oh my God, that guy is, what a mess. What a mess. All right, guys, if you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button. That helps me out with the algorithm. Thank you very much. Oh my God. It is a doozy. Everything I predicted about Eric Adams has come to light. Oh man. Okay. So we do have a lot of stories, so I want to keep it moving. Let's go into the Uber and Lyft situation. So Uber and Lyft, I have a couple of friends that actually worked for Uber or Lyft as like a side gig. But I've also met Uber and Lyft drivers that did this full time, right? Like one of my Uber drivers one time, he was picking us up from the bar and he told us that he did this full time, that he was retired and he just drives for Uber, right? And so some people that are drivers for Uber and Lyft do it part-time, but some people actually do it full-time, like it's a full-time job. We've reported about stories in reference to Uber and Lyft before, where they have been mistreating their workers, whether it's giving them some type of health insurance option, some type of, vacation time or paid vacation, etc. And then also the fund. So from what I understood, I've never driven for Uber or Lyft, but from what I understood from some of the people that I've spoken to that have, it appears that Uber and Lyft collect a lot of the profits. So you may make maybe $400, let's say on a Friday night, but all of that $400 doesn't go to you. And then remember, you have to supply your vehicle and you also have to pay for the gas. So those are other things to take into consideration when we're talking about this type of job. Well, apparently another issue that happened with Uber and Lyft is that they apparently were withholding money from drivers. They have now been ordered to pay $328 million. Let's get into it. Woo! This is a big one. This is a doozy.
Uber and Lyft have agreed to pay hundreds of millions of dollars for shortchanging drivers. Plus, Starbucks is reporting record sales as customers buy pricier specialty drinks. ABC News business reporter Alexis Christophers has more on that and your other business headlines. Alexis, what are you watching today?
Watching Uber and Lyft because this is a major settlement for rideshare drivers. In fact, the New York Attorney General is calling it the largest wage theft settlement for her office. Uber and Lyft agreeing to pay a combined $328 million for withholding money from drivers, $290 million from Uber, $38 million from Lyft. The state saying the companies wrongly deducted certain taxes and fees from drivers' payments between 2013 and 2017. Eligible drivers can now file a claim to receive back pay and mandatory sick leave. Uber and Lyft say.
Let's pause there just for a second. She said this occurred from 2013. I think she said 13 to 2009. Wait a minute. Hold on. Let me go back just to get the years, because I want to say something about.
Wrongly deducted certain taxes and fees from drivers' payments between 2013 and 2017.
2013 and 2017. So they got away with this for 4 years. 4 years.
Eligible drivers can now file a claim to receive back pay and mandatory sick leave. Uber and Lyft say they've been advocating for pay protections for drivers for years. Lyft adding it never violated any laws. More customers.
Never violated any laws. You owe people money. You owe people money. Let's get into the article. That is hilarious. Now, this came from the New York State Attorney General. Actually released this statement. So let's get into this. Attorney General James secures $328 million from Uber and Lyft for taking earnings from drivers. So this is a big deal. It's coming from the Attorney General. Damn, you guys really messed up. New York Attorney General Letitia James today announced 2 landmark settlements totaling $328 million with rideshare companies Uber and Lyft for cheating drivers out of hundreds of millions of dollars. The settlements resolve multi-year investigations into Uber and Lyft, which found that the company's policies withheld hard-earned pay from drivers and prevented them from receiving valuable benefits available under New York labor laws. So this essentially is a labor issue. And labor laws are different state by state. Like Massachusetts may have different labor laws compared to New York, compared to North Carolina, right? But I want to make a good point about this, that I think when we talk about like solutions, like how can we move forward? How could this have been prevented? When you look at companies like Uber and Lyft, the people who are drivers, again, they have an employer. They provide their own car. They provide their own gas. And this is something that they choose to do this job. But still, I'm going to make a point here with this. But essentially, they have those flexible hours that they can do, but they're still working for someone else and they have no stake in the company. What I mean is they don't own a piece of the company. So when we talk about a possible solution in reference to this particular story, instead of working for Uber and Lyft, one of the best things that you can do is you can start a rideshare company that's a worker co-op. There was one actually in New York. I covered it on the show a while back. Co-op Ride, I think was the name of it. But if you actually started anybody can do this, by the way. You guys don't have to work for Uber or Lyft. Anyone can do this. All you got to do is get someone that can design an app. Start your own rideshare company, but make it a worker co-op. That way, all of the drivers that work for those companies, they also own a piece of that company. So they actually have stake in the game. They're actually a part of the company, not just someone that's working for someone else. The CEO of Uber and Lyft, these people are making a lot of money, and they could have paid these people, and this settlement could have been avoided. So that's something that you could do. Work for a rideshare company that is a worker co-op. That way you own a piece of that rideshare company. Let's continue. Now it goes on to say, the settlements announced today will return $328 million in back pay to drivers and institute a minimum driver earnings floor, paid sick leave, proper hiring and earning notices, and other improvements in drivers' working conditions. Uber will pay out $290 million and Lyft will pay $38 million in 2 separate settlement funds, which will be entirely distributed to current and former drivers. So former drivers are also going to get a piece of this settlement as well. Eligible drivers can file a claim to receive the funds they are owed. Notices concerning the distribution will be delivered to drivers by mail, email, and or text message. And then there's information there about the submission, review, and distribution of claims available on the Office of the Attorney General's website. Rideshare drivers work at all hours of the day and night and take people wherever they need to go. This is coming from the Attorney General. For years, Uber and Lyft systematically cheated their drivers out of hundreds of millions of dollars in pay and benefits while they worked long hours in challenging conditions. Let's talk about some of those challenging conditions. You ever get in an Uber car late at night after the bars close? Oh, buddy, let me tell you. So some of my friends that did drive for Uber and Lyft, at least here in Boston, one of the ways you can make the most money is to pick up people after the bars close. So some of them have done that. You pick up the bar crowd. You don't know what you might get. You don't know what you might run into, okay? Someone might puke in your car. These are things that have happened. Someone might puke in your car. You got loud people in the back seat. Some people may try to be dancing and yelling and screaming or whatever in your car. You got to listen to the drunk rhetoric of the people in the back seat. I'm just keeping it real. It's wild. And then if you're doing like Uber Share, where you're trying to cut the price, one way of doing that is the Uber Share. So you're choosing to get into an Uber car with other people that are not with you to cut down on the cost of the ride. I've done that before too, like the Uber pool. And you don't know what you're going to meet or who you're going to run into when you get into those cars, but don't do it with the after bar scene. So there's that. There's also the risk that you have to deal with accidents. So let's say you're driving for Uber and Lyft, and let's say someone rear ends you and say it's not your fault. You have to deal with that. Let's say your car is totaled. Now you have the situation where you don't have a car to drive for Uber and Lyft. And I've known people that ran into that situation and they actually rented a car to continue to drive for them. So there are all different types of conditions that you do have to deal with. But that after bar crowd is no joke. Okay, so it goes on to say, these drivers overwhelmingly come from immigrant communities and rely on these jobs to provide for their families. These settlements will ensure they finally get what they have rightfully earned and are owed under the law. My office will continue to make sure that companies operating in the so-called gig economy do not deprive workers of their rights or undermine the laws meant to protect them. Yeah, the gig economy, it's a big thing. It's more popular now than it was, I'd say, 10, 15 years ago. And these kind of gig jobs, it's like some people will take those jobs because that's the employment they could find at that time, or also because they may pay more. But a lot of times these jobs won't offer benefits. So no health insurance, no paid sick leave, et cetera. Some of those contract positions are like that too. Some of the tech positions are also gig jobs. So the workers oftentimes are not protected. The point that it makes here about some of the people that are drivers are from the immigrant community, not even just that, but here in Boston, I remember when I worked at MIT, one of my coworkers who's not a part of the immigrant community, one of my coworkers at MIT also was driving for Uber and Lyft to help pay off their student loans. So oftentimes, a lot of these people, they're working multiple jobs. That goes back to the capitalism issue. From 2014 to 2017, Uber deducted sales taxes and black car fund fees from drivers from their payments when those taxes and fees should have been paid by the passengers. Uber misrepresented the deductions made to drivers' pay in their terms of service, telling drivers that Uber would only deduct its commission from the driver's fare and that the drivers were entitled to charge the passenger for any tolls, taxes, or fees incurred, though no method to do this was ever provided via the Uber driver app. Of course not. Lyft employed a similar method to shortchange drivers from 2015 and 2017, deducting a 11.4% administrative charge from drivers' payments in New York equal to the amount of sales tax and black car fund fees that should have been paid by drivers. Administrative charge. What are the administrative charges? What is it for? Do they ever tell you? When I was applying to colleges, right, like I thought it was ridiculous. Excuse me. I thought it was ridiculous that you have to pay for a college application. Like you have to pay to apply for it. One of the things they would tell you is that's to cover the administrative fees. What fees? To do what? What does the administrative charge actually pay for? It just, they never explain that. Because the employees at those colleges, universities, or whatever, the employees at Uber and Lyft, they're already receiving a salary anyway. So what does the administrative charge cover? Let's go on. Uber and Lyft also failed to provide drivers with paid sick leave available to employees under New York City and New York State law. So you see, that's a New York thing. That's a New York thing. So again, different state, different things. In addition to paying a total of $328 million in back pay to former drivers, under the settlements, Uber and Lyft had agreed to an earnings floor, guaranteeing drivers across the state are paid a minimum rate from dispatch to completion of the ride. Drivers outside of New York City will receive a minimum of $26 per hour, adjusted annually for inflation, ensuring for the first time that thousands of Uber and Lyft drivers working primarily outside of New York City will be guaranteed minimum pay. Drivers operating in New York City already receive minimum driver pay under regulations established by the Taxi and Limousine Commission in 2019. So, $26 per hour adjusted annually for inflation. That's interesting. Uber and Lyft drivers will now also receive guaranteed paid sick leave. I can't even believe in 2023 this even needs to be said. Drivers will earn 1 hour of sick pay for every 30 hours worked, up to a maximum of 56 hours per year. Drivers completing rides outside of New York City will be paid a minimum of $26 per hour for sick leave, adjusted annually for inflation. To reflect the New York City minimum driver pay rules that already include an amount for paid time off, drivers completing trips covered by the TLC minimum driver pay rules will be compensated at $17 per hour for sick leave, adjusted annually for inflation. Uber and Lyft will also make updates to their apps to allow drivers to request sick leave through the app. You know, it's just interesting because these are things that just should have been done from the beginning. It's, Uber and Lyft will also provide drivers with proper hiring notices and earning statements. as if this even needs to be said. That should have been done. The hiring notices will accurately explain the earnings to which drivers are entitled for their work, and earning statements will accurately detail the compensation earned for each pay period. The companies will also notify drivers after each ride of the amount paid by the rider. The companies will provide an in-app chat support for drivers in multiple languages so they can easily ask questions about their earnings or other work conditions. In addition, drivers will now be able to appeal all deactivations from Uber and Lyft platforms. A lot of this could have been prevented if they did what they were supposed to do from the very beginning, but they were trying to be greedy. That's capitalism for you, trying to be greedy. Well, I'm glad that those drivers will finally get the earnings that they're owed. But again, work for a rideshare company that's a worker co-op or start one. That way you have a stake in the game. Thank you for the super chat, American Autopsy. From the feds going after Mayor Adams and Ben Shapiro trashing Candace Owens' white supremacy, showing it always breaks its tools when it's done to them. I think I'm going to cover that Ben Shapiro and Candace story on Thursday. Thank you, M. Smith, for the super chat. It won't stop until people are held criminally liable. Roger says, Uber, give me my dough that you owe. That's right. Because you guys know, at least especially from call in, Roger drove for Uber. So, all right, Roger. All right. Okay. We are going to, oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss you, Sean? Oh, no. Okay. I didn't. We're going to go to the next story. Oh boy, this is a doozy. This was actually kind of funny. So Aaron Mate apparently was on a train ride recently, and apparently Senator Chris Coons from Delaware was also on the train. So Aaron, being the independent journalist that he is, decided to take this opportunity to confront Chris Coons about the possibility of calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. This is good. You guys got to see this. So Aaron said, Chris Coons sat across from me on the train with Israel using U.S. weapons to kill thousands of Palestinian civilians, including 4,600 plus children. I asked him why he refuses to call for a ceasefire. Let's get into this.
Senator, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but when I call for a ceasefire in Gaza, I'm a journalist, name's Aaron Mate. When I call for a ceasefire in Gaza, you have 4,600 children killed. 46. I know it's a quiet card. I apologize for abusing it.
Let's pause there. Eric, do you think we can turn it up a little bit if you think so? But I have something to say really quick about the quiet car issue. I've been on a quiet car. People still talk on the quiet car. People still talk on the quiet car because, like, I've been on a quiet car and I was actually having a phone conversation with my mom on the quiet car. Now, I'm telling you this because the way that these events unfold with this particular situation is just ridiculous and uncalled for. I've never seen anybody escorted off of the quiet car, kicked out of the quiet car. What you're going to see, though, is Senator Chris Coons using his power and authority as a U.S. senator to basically get Aaron Mate kicked off this train because he doesn't want to have to deal with this issue about calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. That's what this is really about. It's not about the fact that it's a quiet car. That's Chris being a punk ass and not really wanting to have this conversation.
When I call for a ceasefire in Gaza, you have 4,600 children killed. 46. I know it's a quiet card. I apologize for abusing it. I understand, but children are dying. Children are dying, sir. More than 40. When I call for a ceasefire, they're being killed with our weapons. U.S. weapons are killing kids in Gaza.
Who are you?
My name is Aaron Mate. I'm a journalist.
Nice to meet you, Aaron.
Likewise.
Please stop talking to me.
I'm sorry.
So he says, who are you? Which Aaron already introduced himself at the beginning, but he says, who are you? He said, my name is Aaron Mate. I'm a journalist. Nice to meet you, Aaron. Stop talking to me. These are our representatives. I don't know why people in Delaware keep voting for this guy, but they do. Is this how he talks to his constituents? If one of his constituents approached him, would he say, stop talking to me? Except when it's time for re-election and he needs more money.
Sir, it's of dire importance. More than 11,000 civilians, as we're talking, being killed. I'm a journalist with for the gray zone.
Why does it matter? You see this part right here? So he asked him again, as if he didn't hear him the first and the second time. Who are you? What do you do? I'm a journalist. For why does it matter what outlet he works for? Because now Chris Coons is trying to decide, is this journalist worth my time? That's what this is about. Because if he goes on to say, I work for the Washington Post or I work for the New York Times, then he'd probably sit there and want to have the conversation. So that's something you need to think about. Let's go back in. This guy is a piece of work.
As we're talking, being killed. I'm a journalist with for the gray zone.
What's the gray zone?
It's a U.S. based news website.
Good for you.
Thank you. And right now with our support, kids
stop.
are being killed. I'm sorry. With our
Please
weapons,
stop.
I'm asking you to explain when I call for a ceasefire.
You're bothering me and everyone else around.
Why is Chris Coons bothered? He's bothered because he's being spoken to? No, he's bothered because the subject that Aaron is talking about. That's why he's bothered. Apparently, according to Chris Coons, Aaron is bothering everybody around them. Apparently so.
Kids in Gaza are being massacred. I'm asking you, please explain. Why not call for a ceasefire?
Stop. Sir, Could I please have some help here?
Kids are being killed with our
Please
weapons.
stop. I'm asking you to stop.
Why not stop?
This is
Why
not
not call
an
for
appropriate
stopping
place
a
for you to
bomb?
interview me. You're bothering everybody else around.
It's a crisis
How
right
did you
now.
get this seat?
I bought the seat.
Okay, let me go back for a second. When he says you're bothering everyone else
Asking
around,
you to stop.
Why not stop?
This is
Why
not
not
an
call for
appropriate
stopping
place
a
for you
bomb?
to interview me. You're bothering everybody else
It's
around.
I don't think it doesn't seem like he's bothering everyone else around. It seems like he's just bothering Chris.
It's a crisis
How
right
did you
now.
get this seat?
How did you get this seat? Ladies and gentlemen, the entitlement. How did you get this seat? Could you imagine if I was sitting there? You know, how you get this seat? How can you afford to get this seat? Do you see this? This is the entitlement. This is Chris Coons showing his whole ass. Apparently, he doesn't think that Aaron can afford to pay for the seat. It's a train. Why is Chris acting like this is a first class seat, like on some luxury like jet or something like that? It's Amtrak, bruh. How did you get the seat?
I bought the seat.
No. He's bothering me while I'm trying to do work.
And our government is paying for weapons that are murdering children and guys. I'm asking him why I call for a ceasefire.
Aaron,
Can you explain that?
please stop.
Can I ask you to explain why I call for a
You've already asked me
ceasefire?
5 times. I'm not
And
going
why
to
won't
call
you
for a
explain?
ceasefire. I strongly support humanitarian causes. I've urged the Israeli government to target their campaign against Hamas. But you need
Do you think
to
the
stop.
campaign is targeting against Hamas when
Aaron,
civilians are being massacred,
Aaron.
when babies and incubators are dying
Aaron,
because the
please
fuel is
stop,
being cut
or
off?
I'm going to have you thrown off this train. Please stop doing this.
He gonna throw Aaron off the train. Please stop, or I'm gonna have you thrown off this train. Is he inflicting any physical harm to Chris? No. He's asking questions. He is a journalist. That is his job. This is what journalists do. They ask tough questions. You're a politician. This comes with the job. If you don't want it to come with the job, get a different job, Chris. See, a lot of these politicians, our so-called representatives, they want these positions. They like the perks that come with it, the sort of power that they think that they have along with it. They like the pay, the money that comes with it, the book deals, the pension that they get for having these positions for a certain number of years. But they don't want to deal with all the other things that come with being an elected official in this country. And one of those things is being accountable to your constituents. That is part of the job. They can approach you. A journalist can approach you. Your constituents can approach you. So if you're uncomfortable with that, Chris, maybe you should not be a politician. And he's a senator. So his seat is for 6 years.
I have to
You
ask
asked
these
me
questions.
10 times.
I know, and I
You're
will keep-
getting as professional, measured, and appropriate an answer out of me as you can. This is not professional journalism. Please get up and leave now.
I don't think it's.
So now he's becoming the gatekeeper of journalism. This isn't professional journalism. Well, define professional journalism. Reporters, as long as I can remember, even when I was a kid, reporters are known for chasing after people to get a story, literally chasing after people in the street. They're known for doing that. This is what journalists do. They have to get the story. So how is it not professional? He's not berating you. He's not calling you any kind of names. He's talking pretty low. He's just asking Chris Coons questions. And I've seen journalists go a lot further and harder than that. I've seen journalists go through great lengths to get questions, get answers from people, and to get a story. But now Chris Coons is the gatekeeper of journalism. And according to Chris, this is not professional.
It's humane to be massacring kids. That's the problem here.
That's
I
great.
realize I'm not
I don't
being
think it's
professional.
humane to be massacring kids either.
Okay, then
And
why
I
are we
think when
supporting it?
Hamas massacred 1,400 Israeli civilians, the whole world should unite in opposition to terrorism.
So he calls out the 1,400 number, right? Notice how they always make it seem that the 1,400 number is so much greater and larger than the 11,000 Palestinian people that have died in Gaza. Over 4,000 of them children. Notice how that, I'm no math whiz here, But 1,400 is a lot less than 11,000. And it's been that way over the years, by the way. The Palestinian casualties have always been more than the casualties when you compare it to the Israeli people. And what Chris, well, I'm not going to say he doesn't realize it. I think Chris does realize it. When they make those statements, what I want you to realize what they're really saying is that one life is more valuable than the other. Because it's not about the number. If we're looking at the numbers, obviously the Palestinians have more casualties. But what they're really saying, what Chris is really saying, is that an Israeli life is more valuable than a Palestinian life. That's really what they're saying.
First of all, the number is 1,200. It wasn't entirely civilians.
Are we going to quibble over how many civilians were massacred by Hamas?
It's important to be precise.
It is important to be precise.
But yes, civilians were massacred.
I'm a senator.
Does that give us the right to
This is a quiet car. You're breaking the basic rules of how we operate on Amtrak.
Okay, and the question.
Oh, so now he worked for Amtrak. I'm a senator. This is a quiet car. You're breaking the basic rules of how we operate here on Amtrak. Now he speaks for the whole company. Again, I've rode on quiet cars. That is not the rule that you can't talk. Thank you for pointing this out, Danny. Quiet car means speak in a low volume. It doesn't mean no speaking aloud. Exactly. And that's what Aaron is doing. He's speaking in a low volume. But now Chris apparently works for Amtrak and is speaking for the whole company.
You're breaking the basic rules of how we operate on Amtrak.
Okay, and the question is
stop.
And I believe we're breaking international law by supporting massacres of civilians. Yes.
You've had a lot of my time. Please move on.
Why not at least call for a ceasefire?
So Chris gets up, and I assume this is when he goes to get the manager. This is when he goes to do this, because the thing that I noticed with this as well was that the question that Aaron is asking is, why not call for a ceasefire? That's it. But Chris Coons said, like, you had a lot of my time. That video was like a little over 2 minutes. So Aaron is removed from Amtrak. Kid you not. Chris Coons said, we're not going to throw mama from the train. He said, we're going to throw Aaron Mate from the train. So Aaron says, after questioning Senator Coons about his support for Israeli massacres in Gaza, I was asked to move to a different seat. I complied. About 30 minutes later, he walked by me. We did not exchange words. At the next stop in Philadelphia, I was removed from the train. They said, throw Aaron from the damn train.
So I've just been removed from an Amtrak train going to Washington, D.C. after I questioned Democratic Senator Chris Coons about his support for the Israeli mass murder campaign in Gaza and his refusal to call for a ceasefire. After I questioned him, he left his seat, then he came back, and then he asked that I be removed. And so a Amtrak staffer came over and told me to change seats or else I'd be thrown off the train. And in Senator Coons' defense, this was the quiet car. And so I did violate the norms of the quiet car by questioning him about.
No, don't give him credit, Aaron. Don't give him no credit. Don't give him any type of credit or whatever. You're allowed to talk on the quiet car. You're just supposed to do so quietly.
His stance. But I felt this was important because we're talking about a massacre in Gaza. And I felt okay violating the norms of the quiet car, given that I believe we're violating international law by supporting the murder of so many innocents inside Gaza. So after he made that request, I did move my seat. I complied and I sat somewhere else. And the train continued along. But then a while later, he walked by me. We did not exchange words. I was respecting the sanctity of the quiet car and his request that I no longer question him. But shortly after that, the train stopped in Philadelphia, and all of a sudden I was taken off the train by police.
So they called the cops on Aaron. Now you guys see why I go so hard after the police state? It's not just about police brutality. It's the whole concept of the police state, that the cops can be called on you for any little thing now. If he switched seats, he complied, he did what he was asked to do, why did they go contact the police? Why? It's crazy.
And told that I had been thrown off by the conductor. I'm assuming at the request of Senator Coons. So Senator Coons, if it makes you feel better to have me removed from a train because I bothered you, I understand it's not pleasant to be questioned, especially not to be questioned about supporting the mass murder of civilians. But what I hope you will still address is why you are supporting this mass murder.
Yeah. So what is more important here, guys? The fact that Aaron is asking him questions, like this guy on a train asking a senator questions, or the thousands of kids that are being killed in Gaza? What's more important? You got to remember who Chris Coons is. You got to remember what state he represents. Chris Coons is from Delaware. That's Joe Biden's state. Something to think about. Something to think about. And I'm going to show you something else about Chris Coons too, because I want to remind you something that Chris did. But the thing is that, so what are journalists supposed to do? They don't care about those kids. Oh, don't get it twisted. They don't care about your kids either. They don't care about what's happening to American children either.
Why you won't call for a ceasefire along with some of your Democratic colleagues who are in the House. And I don't regret at all questioning you about that, even though it was in the quiet car, because right now, as inconvenienced as you were by my questions, there are over 2 million people in Gaza who are being massacred and displaced. And given that this is being done with US weaponry, their rights need to be addressed. And these questions need to be answered.
That's right. And if I was Aaron, I wouldn't have even apologized for it. When they sign up to be politicians, I'm sorry, but this comes with the job. Now, Ian Bowen, who's an actor, actually responded to this. And he said, not a fan of how this entire thing was conducted or went down. So hold on. We'll come back to this. Look, this is Ian Bowen. Ian is an actor. Okay, so he's an actor. This apparently appears to be some movie or TV show that he probably, I think it's him over there, that he probably was a part of, right? So Ian Bowen, actor, not a fan of how this entire thing was conducted or went down. Okay. Who the fuck are you, Ian? I'm like, who are you? You're an actor. And you over in Hollyweird land. Why are you even concerned about what is happening with Senator Chris Coons? And by the way, I've never heard of this actor before. I don't know if this is like a D-list actor, C-list actor. Anybody heard of this guy? I don't even know this guy. But why is he even a part of this conversation? I don't get it. So Aaron replied to Ian, and he said, I'm not a fan of mass murder. Here he comes again. Who the fuck is this guy? He says, no one is, Aaron. That's a divisive and banal bromide. I'm questioning the efficacy of the tactic, unlikely to accomplish anything serious, and instead galvanize your opposition. You can't think you can intimidate senators and sway their stance by doing this, can you? Ineffective. So Ian reminds me of one of those people that may not participate in activism, any of these protests, but he'll sit back from the sidelines and criticize how you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. Like, this is yikes. It's just weird that a Hollywood actor commented on this. Now, what was also interesting, this made the New York Post, watch this. Democratic Senator Chris Coons accosted by far left journalists on Amtrak. I'm going to have you thrown off this train. Look at this far left. Look at what they do. This is the piece I want to highlight here further down. So they basically just rehashed the whole video that we saw there. They quote Chris and Aaron, etc. But this part I want to show you. Watch this. Amtrak did not respond to the Post's request for comment. Mate and the Gray Zone, an independent media outlet, have been critical of Israel for years, even before the Jewish state's declaration of war against Hamas in the wake of the terrorist group's massacre of 1,200 people on October 7th. Let me highlight this. 1,200 people on October 7th. Chris Coons said it was 1,400 people. The New York Post has already corrected the number of people and said it was 1,200 people. And he's a senator. Israel's retaliatory airstrikes have killed more than 11,000 Palestinians in Gaza, according to the Hamas-controlled health ministry in the territory. Listen to this part. The outlet has also published fringe theories claiming that Syrian dictator Bashar Assad did not use chemical weapons during the Syrian civil war, and that the Chinese Communist Party is not oppressing the Uygur community in the Xinjiang province. So you see what they're doing? That's a way for them to discredit the Gray Zone. The Gray Zone had numerous coverage about the OPCW report. Aaron Mate won an award for that work. They don't mention that, though. They don't mention that they're award-winning journalists. But you need to know who Chris is. You see, Chris, he kind of funny, right? I want to take you back to the minimum wage to show you who Chris really is. You remember when those 8 senators, 7 Democrats, and 1 independent voted against minimum wage increase? One of those senators was Chris Coons. And I want to take you back to a time when he was saying the opposite. Says Senator Chris Coons thinks the Senate will raise the minimum wage. I want to show you who Chris is. Chris is a paid liar. Watch.
You know, the $15 an hour minimum wage is another one of those issues that's really important to people. I know that you are not for it at the moment and voted against it, but is that something that is a tenable position for a Democrat when Democrats have power and can make these changes for people, but are hanging on to the filibuster for what? To empower Republicans?
Let's be clear, Joy. I support raising the minimum wage. I support indexing the minimum wage. I support increasing the minimum wage and getting to $15 an hour.
So you all heard that, right? I support increasing the minimum wage. Okay.
I had some concerns about Bernie Sanders' specific bill and how it raises the minimum wage that, frankly, got very little discussion about the impact of 2 provisions of it. I think we will get that done this year. And I've already been having conversations with folks in my caucus about how we can get that done this year.
Okay. Everybody hold on to that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So hold on to that, right? Okay. So that was Chris telling you, that was 2 years ago. Chris telling you that he supported the minimum wage increase and that he thought they would get it done this year. Let me show you what happened. 8 Democrats defect on the $15 minimum wage hike. See, I'm going to show you how they lie. Let me show you how they lie. The Senate on Friday is set to squash a bid to tack a $15 minimum wage to President Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion pandemic aid bill, with 8 Democratic caucus members joining all 50 Republicans in rejecting the change. The Senate parliamentarian had ruled that the wage increase could not be added to the bill and approved by a simple majority of senators, despite the House passage of the provision last week. After Senate Democrats stripped it from the package, a group of progressive senators led by Bernie Sanders forced a vote on the policy change anyway. The vote remained held open Friday afternoon at a tally of 42 to 58 while senators negotiated on other issues. But it had already showed that even though the Democratic caucus overwhelmingly supports the effort of gradually raising the wage floor to $15 an hour, raising the wage faces significant hurdles within the party. Listen to this part. Democrat Senators Joe Manchin, John Tester, Jeanne Shaheen, Kirsten Sinema, Maggie Hassan voted against proceeding it, though the tally remains open. So did 2 close Biden allies, Chris Coons and Tom Carper of Delaware. So you see how they lie? I just wanted to remind you of that. That's who Chris Coons is. He talked a good game in that interview there with Joy Reid, but when it came down to it, Chris Coons opposed the $15 minimum wage increase. And by the way, that increase was not going to happen overnight. That was a gradual change, just like it was here in Massachusetts when we passed it. So that's who Aaron Mate was talking to. And I don't think Aaron should apologize. Chris Coons is bought and paid for. He's from Delaware. Delaware is the credit card state, guys. The same state as Joe Biden. He's not trying to help out the American people. He's trying to help out these companies, these corporations. That's what it always comes down to, the money. So that is something to think about. And actually, Eric, can we pull up his open, if you have time, can we pull up his open secrets? Let's pull up Chris Coons' open secrets. Because a lot of these politicians, again, they're just bought and paid for. But Delaware is that credit card state. Something to think about. Let me see if I can do it here. Because that was something I didn't think about at that point in time when I did this. I do want to check him out. Let's see. Chris Coons. Thanks. Let's check out Chris Coons' open secrets. It's 2024. Let's go back and go to the last one. Maybe 2022, I think. When he came in. That's campaign committee only. Let's go to contributors. Let's go to that. This in order of total. Okay. All right. So look, this is what I wanted to show you. Look at Chris Coons' contributors. Conaway Young, over 102,000. Apollo Global Management. Jane Street Capital, wait for it, DuPont Company, Paul Weiss. Paul Weiss, we've mentioned him before, right? You got people like Richie Torres and them getting money from Paul Weiss too. That's also connected with AIPAC. Like this is all the, look at this. Democracy Engine, Amgen Inc., K&L Gates, Centerview Partners, Goldman Sachs. So, Aaron, you don't need to apologize. Bought and paid for. That's Chris Coons. Let me go to some of the comments here. Thank you for the super chat, Aspen Fallen. Aaron only apologized because he's a Canadian. Oh, that's sweet. I talked about the quiet car. I'll take the comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Kameshwari, Kate. Aaron wasn't stalking Coons. Aaron was on his way to Timcast for a podcast. Yeah. I haven't seen that yet. I'll have to check that out. But yeah, I think that, whenever in doubt, follow the money. All right, we're going to move on to our next story, which is Roger Waters and Abby Martin on Gaza genocide. So I think some of you, if you were with me back then, you remember this coverage of Roger Waters. He was being smeared by mainstream media before a performance that he had, which he's done before in other shows. People said that the performance that he did for one of his concerts was anti-Semitic, but this was also in reference to the war in Ukraine. Roger Waters spoke out heavily against that. I think he also spoke to the UN about that as well. So Roger Waters was a target. And he's also spoken up in reference to the Palestinian people and their struggle and their rights as well. So they've been coming after Roger for a minute. In this discussion here with him and Abby Martin, he talks about that. He discusses like the attacks that he's faced, the smears that he's faced. And I just want to remind everybody again, Roger Waters is a musician. Okay. Like people, the way that they came after Roger Waters during that time, you would have thought that Roger Waters was like some high ranking political official, which obviously he's not. He doesn't have a political position at all. But you would have assumed that the way that the press came after him in their efforts to smear him. Let's go ahead and get into that discussion here.
Talk about that, and also just kind of the irony of being called an anti-Semitic Nazi, essentially, given who your father was and how he paid the ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah. Well, as you say, it's been going on for a long time now, and so there's really no mystery in it. The state of Israel is under duress from many, many quarters. I'm just one tiny bit of the BDS movement, and I have been fairly outspoken. And they picked up on me probably 15 or 16 years ago. Yeah, so the Israeli lobby has got a loud and spiteful voice. And as the Israeli lobby, although it has opinions, doesn't have a leg to stand on in any conversation about the state of Israel, how it was created, the massacres that happened in 1948, all the massacres that have happened since, all the ethnic cleansing, the destruction of Palestinian villages, and then more recently, after the Second Intifada, the bombings of Gaza after they left, after the military left, but they created this concentration camp in Gaza. And so there were the bombings in 2008-9, then 2014, then 2018, 2019, 2021, and now this one, which is absolutely unashamed, no argument, no question, genocidal attack, intended. All their politicians have come out and sort of admitted that they are attempting genocide and that they won't be happy until they've achieved it.
In fact, Netanyahu, I'm going to try to cover this on Thursday, if I remember, because I forgot about it last time. Netanyahu publicly has made these comments that he does not care. He doesn't care about the dead children. He doesn't care about the Palestinian babies. He doesn't care about the fact that the doctors in the hospital trying to basically perform operations under like a flashlight because they don't have the electricity. Like he doesn't care. He doesn't care about the babies that have been pulled off the incubators because there's just no electricity at Sharifa Hospital. So they have made these statements publicly, and the US government and mainstream media continues to pretend like they have not said these things. This is not just an opinion or a belief that we have that there's a genocide going on. It's the blatant statements in the data that has been presented in front of us that tell us this is what is happening.
And what of course you and I and anybody sane is doing is making a huge fuss, but particularly because our governments have given them carte blanche to kill every last Palestinian between the river and the sea, which after all is Palestine, always was in our hearts. It always will be. There I go again, you see. I'm demanding the death of every Jew on earth by even that, which of course I'm not. I've got nothing against Jews at all. I never have had, and I never will have. That is not the way I judge people. If I judge people by their actions, not by their religion or their ethnicity. As I say it again and again and again, I have explained ad nauseam, because I've had a long time to work this out, that my platform and the platform from which I speak is the platform built upon the Declaration of Universal Human Rights in Paris in 1948 that you and I know. Okay, there are 30 articles. Many people don't know it. But basically, that's what it says. It says we're all human beings. This was decided after the Second World War, when the human race sort of got together in a fledgling United Nations of we the peoples of this earth and said, we don't want all this war bullshit. So we're going to form this organization to avert the possibility of us ever having to go to war again. But this doesn't go along with the moneymakers of the world. And I'm not talking about Jewish people. I'm talking about people who like to make a lot of money and couldn't give a shit about anyone else. And then they are a minority, thank goodness. So
he's talking about the Zionist. That's what he's talking about. And no, they're not the same thing.
So do we believe in human rights equally distributed amongst our brothers and sisters in the human race, or don't we? I do believe in that concept. The Israeli government, among many other governments maybe even, but people definitely does not believe in it. They admit it openly, at least they're honest about it. They say, we do not believe in civil or human or rights under the terms of the law for any of the indigenous people of Palestine.
Let me just pause right there for a second. When they talk about believing in human rights, a lot of these governments only believe in human rights for certain people. There's also a genocide happening in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later on this week. The Congo is also experiencing genocide. But a lot of these governments, when they talk about this human rights and they say we believe in human rights, some of these governments are only talking about human rights for certain people. So when it comes to the state of Israel, they don't believe that the Palestinian people should have those human rights. They don't believe in this at all. This is what people have to fully get. When you and I have this conversation, and when we talk about like how the Palestinian people should have these rights, the government, the state of Israel, the government does not believe they should have them. Same thing happening in the Congo. They don't believe those people should have them. And when you hear these statements from our US government, I'm here to let you know these politicians in the United States also don't believe that the Palestinian people should have them. If they believe that, this idea of a two-state solution, which was proposed many years ago, those things would have already happened. Netanyahu doesn't want it. And Naftali Bennett before him also didn't want it. They didn't want it. They don't want them to have any rights. That's what people fully have to grasp.
We just don't believe it. We think we are special and they are animals. And so obviously they don't deserve it. That would be like giving rights to cockroaches. We don't believe in. So that's why I stand up and make as much noise as I can every single day of my life. So do you. So do many, many, many of my friends.
I want to.
Now we're going to make this connection to the United States and with a different group of people. We're going to talk about what happened to African Americans in this country, especially for those of us that are from the South, those who were alive during the Jim Crow laws. How were Jim Crow laws allowed to be implemented in the first place? because the governments did not believe that African Americans should have those same rights. Think about it. This is why it kills me when people say, don't talk about this issue. Black people shouldn't talk about this. No, fuck that. Let's be real here. They didn't believe in this country. They did not believe that African Americans should be able to sit at the front of the bus. They didn't believe that we should have well-resourced schools. They didn't believe the kids should have the school buses. So you can talk to people like my grandparents who lived through Jim Crow law, and they'll tell you the stories about how they had to walk miles to school because, again, the government in this country didn't want them to have a bus, but the white kids at the white school had a bus. They didn't believe they were supposed to have those same rights. They didn't believe that you were supposed to have the same access to resources as our white peers in this country. They didn't believe we deserved it. And I don't know how many times I got to say this to get this issue through people's thick skull. The people who are saying, don't talk about this. This has nothing to do with black people. If you can't make the connection between what is happening to the Palestinian people, what's happening to people in the Congo, and what has happened to black people in this country, you missed the boat, bud. You missed the boat. Put the two together. We can talk about different groups this happened to in this country. The indigenous people. We killed your people. We stole your land. Here's a reservation and a casino. Be happy. The Japanese American internment camps in this country. Let's put you on a camp and force you to work. Be happy with what we gave you. And honestly, in this country, our government needs to be happy that Native Americans, the indigenous people in this country, they need to be happy that they haven't risen up. And I believe the only reason they haven't is because you killed most of them. Let's continue.
Actually, ask you, what was the moment that you woke up to just this egregious situation going on? Because for me, it was, I mean, I was radicalized by the Iraq War, but the 2010 Gaza Flotilla massacre was really the moment that catalyzed my radicalism, like my radicalization into how Israel was, working in concert with the media.
The Mavi Mara, the Turkish ship, the Turkish.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was radicalized a little bit before that. My turning point was when I was doing a tour of Europe in 2005. And suddenly there was a gap between Beirut and somewhere or other else. So my agent stuck a gig in Tel Aviv. And they went, oh look, you've just got time. You can go and do the Haikon Stadium in Tel Aviv. And knowing nothing, really, of which I'm deeply ashamed, I went, okay. So suddenly there was this gig in there, and I started to get emails from supporters of the Palestinian people saying, oi, what do you think you're doing? And luckily, this was exactly the time that Omar Barghouti, who's become quite a close friend of mine, among others in Palestinian civil society, had just started the BDS movement. They'd looked at the South African model of how the people of South Africa threw off the shackles imposed upon them by the Dutch, by the Boers, for however many hundreds of years it was there. And so they decided that boycott, divestment, and sanction was a great non-violent way of fighting back against the fact that their land was being stolen and they were oppressed and that they were occupied, had been since 1967, and so on and so forth.
That part right there about BDS, I think it's important. I'm so glad that he mentioned that, because I don't think a lot of people are aware. For people who criticize, like people like Richie Torres, who criticize the BDS movement, you need to know that that movement actually came from what the people did in South Africa that were fighting back against apartheid. That's where they got the idea from. So they watched what people did in South Africa and were like, oh, okay, this is how they were able to fight back. And they were able to use that to create the BDS movement. So when politicians like Richie Torres and Hakeem Jeffries, when they criticize BDS, I don't even think they really fully understand what they're criticizing. Because you can't sit up there in one full breath, and a lot of these politicians are doing it. You sit up there in one full breath and you applaud Nelson Mandela for his fight against apartheid in South Africa. And you acknowledge the apartheid that happened in South Africa. But in that same breath, you are not willing to acknowledge the apartheid that is taking place in Israel. And you're not willing to applaud the BDS movement. Bought and paid for, a lot of them.
So it's a rather long story. Cut it short, I cancelled my gig. They explained to me that the stadium in Tel Aviv, Haikon Stadium, is built on Palestinian cemetery.
Oh
it's
my God.
A desecration of the culture, life, world of the people who were living in the land when the Israelis decided after the Second World War in 1948 to steal it and just take it. So they did, and prevailed upon the United Nations that we were talking about before, with a lot of support from the UK government and the United States government, even then, to push through recommendations that the Jewish people should be given a homeland in Palestine. They didn't ask the Palestinian people, of course. They decided that. Anyway,
they didn't ask people in Uganda either, because one of the countries they were also looking at was Uganda. They didn't ask any of those people. They didn't, like he said, they didn't ask the Palestinian people if that was okay. And one of the things that I brought up before, it kind of seems like to me, because these atrocities took place in reference to the Jewish people, these atrocities that occurred started in Germany, one would think that Germany would be the country to offer them a safe space. One would think that. But see, the British government didn't want to displace white people. They didn't want to displace Europeans. But it was okay to displace Palestinians.
Finish my story. I actually I did do a gig in Israel. I did it at a peace village that was called, in Hebrew, it's Neve Shalom, and in Arabic, it's Al-Wahasat, I believe. And it was hugely successful, and 60,000 young Israelis came. Of course, what I didn't realize at the time, that it would only be young Israeli Jews coming to it, because no Palestinian is allowed to move. So I couldn't play to a mixed audience. There's no such thing. And the gig, it was the Dark Side of the Moon tour, and it went swimmingly, as you would imagine. And they were it's like, whoa, Roger, yeah. Until we got to the end, and I grabbed the mic and I went, oh, thank you very much. What a lovely evening. Now is the time, this generation, this new young generation of Israelis must start talking to your neighbors and make peace with your neighbors and figure out how to stop the occupation and the blah, blah, blah. And they went from, to, what the fuck? In a heartbeat. And in that moment, I thought, oh my God, I don't even begin to understand that. So I went
Talk about cognitive dissonance.
Absolutely. And the next year I went back and I traveled all over Palestine the next year and saw it with my own eyes. And until you've been there and seen it with you, it's hard to comprehend. Even then, that was in 2006. Even then, it's hard to comprehend how disgusting it is.
Abby Martin has a really good documentary about Gaza. Someone told me this. I don't know if this is true, but someone told me that Abby Martin is not allowed to go back to Israel. I don't know for sure, but I do know there are some people that are not, permitted to enter. And I will say, I think you really need to watch that documentary. by Abby Martin. I think you can see it now on, what's the name of that? Means TV. I think you can find it on Means TV now. Gamer said Abby is banned from Israel. That is real. Okay, so there you go. But she has a really good documentary about Gaza.
How hideous, what a hideous atmosphere everywhere there is. And how, as you say, cognitive dissonance, it's not just inbred into the Israeli population, it's also propaganded into them. They almost inject their children through the eyeball to get them to believe, because it's repeated again and again. Palestinians are animals. Palestinians, they're not human. Don't even think about them ever.
It kind of reminds you of children that have like racism, indoctrined in them here in the United States. If you're a child and you're told since the time that, you were able to talk, that, Black people are evil or indigenous people are evil or bad people or whatever. And that's ingrained in you from the time that you are young. You're brainwashed. And it's like, in order for you to see a different perspective of that, number one, you have to be willing to want to see and hear a different perspective. Not everyone is. There are some that have done this before and they've changed like their entire path and journey. And some of them have become actually fighters towards the people that are still like them, how they used to be. Some people have fought back against like racism after they've left like those types of organizations. But when something is ingrained in you from the time when you are a child, I say the same thing about religion as well. Sometimes it can be really difficult to break people away from that.
And they are so directed at maintaining the idea that Israeli Jews are supreme beings chosen by God and nothing must get in the way. Of course, they don't. Of course, all Israeli Jews don't believe that, obviously, because you can't indoctrinate absolutely everybody. I suggest that might be true of any society. Another name that was on during my tour, it's interesting that they should have picked out, you can't have Anne Frank and Shireen Abu Akleh in the same context, in the same thing, because Anne Frank is holier than holy and Shireen is an animal. She's Palestinian. Another name that comes up in that thing is Sophie Scholl. Okay, well, she wasn't Jewish. She was German, but she was executed by the Nazis in Munich in September 1943 for distributing leaflets in the universities saying, we have to stop Hitler persecuting our Jewish brothers and sisters. So this is a big circle, and we're all part of it because we're all human beings. We're all brothers and sisters. We're all cousins. But unfortunately, some of us come under the sway of malign influences like the Israeli government who try and teach us that we're special. No, we're not.
Well, when you see,
I also think I think it's dangerous rhetoric when you start to tell one group that they're better than another group or they're more special than another group. I think because then it's like, then you can easily start to believe that. And then also it gives you the impression that other groups are less than you. Right? This is something when I was growing up, we went to church when I was growing up. So I grew up in the church. One of the things that I disagreed with was I did feel like one of the churches I went to, our pastor he'd do this thing where he would just basically criticize other denominations. And not even necessarily other religions, but other Christian denominations. So he would say, so for those of you who don't know, I actually went to a Pentecostal church, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but they are very strict. So at one point I went to a Pentecostal church that did not last long. Let me make that clear. But they were very strict, a lot of rules. Women couldn't wear pants, couldn't wear makeup, couldn't wear jewelry, like all that kind of stuff. Most of the rules applied to the women. Go figure, right? But they would actually, like, he would basically demonize other denominations. The Methodists are bad. The Baptists are bad. They're not right because they're not us. We're the special people. We're the ones that are on the right path. So I saw some of that too within within Christianity. And I never really understood the reason for having all these different denominations if we're all reading from the same Bible or like the King James version or whatever. I never really understood that, but I think it is a dangerous thing when you start to tell one group of people that they are the ones that are, better or supreme or, special, because then what comes along with that? The other groups are not there.
The U.S. officials, they make very clear what is going on. I mean, you had Biden basically just saying we in reference to Israel. Our operation is going well. We are, we're attempting to do this. It's like, okay, you're not even hiding the fact that Israel is this colonial outpost with, utility for the U.S. empire. I just saw RFK Jr. admitting as such. It was pretty fascinating. I don't know if you saw this clip, Roger. It was incredible to see a member of the ruling class just explicitly laying out the utility of Israel, saying it's our beachhead, it's our eyes and ears in the Middle East. If we let go of Israel's control and the authority over Israel, China and Russia will get all the oil. And it was just like, wow, finally, someone just saying it for what it is. Let's not tiptoe around this notion that, we're protecting it because it's a democracy. Oh, it's this and that. I mean, it is very important for the U.S. to maintain Israel as its partner.
Well, let us not forget that the ADL and Shmuley told RFK that they were going to take any possible sniff of the presidency away from him if he didn't toe the line. And so I cannot believe he believes all that bullshit about Israel that he spouts, because most of it is historically incorrect. All that.
I don't think he believes it either. I'm so glad that Roger Waters said this. I don't think that RFK really believes all that stuff either. I think that RFK, he's a very intelligent man. I mean, he's a lawyer. He's had a lot of education in this country that most of us would never have the opportunity to have the type of education that RFK Jr. had. I mean, he went to elite schools. He's a Kennedy, for God's sake. I highly doubt that RFK Jr. is not educated enough to look up this information in reference to this conflict with Israel and Gaza. I highly doubt that. So I don't really think he believes all this stuff either. And I think what Roger Waters said there is spot on. I think that is exactly what is happening.
Horrible. About 1967 and how Israel was attacked by its Arab neighbors and in heroic way fought back and got the Golan Heights and this. And they weren't attacked. They attacked Egypt and Syria.
The whole Israeli project is based on Orwell. I mean, it's all projection of what they do to other people and cry victim. And it's the same with everything. I mean, you mentioned just being there and the atmosphere. I mean, you know how it is to go into the West Bank, the giant red signs saying you could be killed, enter at your own risk. It's like, yeah, by you. Yeah. By your soldiers. Like, I mean, Palestine is the most gorgeous place on earth. The people are the most hospitable people in the world. They welcome you with open arms. It's the soldiers. It's the settlers. Those are the people that are fanatical. And Roger, it kills me to see Israeli officials, as you mentioned, explicit about their genocidal intent. Very clearly. I have never seen so many Israeli media officials and politicians just laying out their genocidal aspirations as I have in the last month, juxtaposing that with Biden and all of these so-called liberals that are tiptoeing around the reality. They keep saying, "Oh, we need a humanitarian pause, Roger. Oh, well, we can't trust the Hamas-run health ministry." Well, look at Israeli media. They're saying every single death is correct. They're using Hamas death tolls and they're saying, this is how many terrorists we've killed on a tracker live. If you're watching Israeli media and you have Democrats running cover for this genocide, it's sick and it's crazy. And why are we tiptoeing around what's actually happening here?
And they know, and that's the thing. They know, you guys, like these politicians, they know what's going on over there. They know what's happening. They're controlled. They're bought and paid for. And, you know, I think we need to start asking the question, who is running this country? Who? Please check out this full interview. It's really good. It is Roger Waters and Abby Martin on Gaza genocide. That is on Empire Files. Please go check out the rest of that. Great interview there. But it's so much craziness happening. When you see this debate between, we're going to get into Piers Morgan and Rabbi Shmuley with Cenk Uygur, it's just wild and crazy. I seriously do not believe a lot of our politicians were lawyers before they were senators, before they were congressmen and women. These people are highly educated. They know exactly what's going on over there. These people have been bought off. They've been told to keep quiet about it or else. That's what's happening. And I believe the same thing with RFK Jr. too. I do not buy that RFK Jr. is stupid. Let's go to some of these comments here. Valen says Netanyahu went to MIT. Israel's surveillance technology is part of why your comments are being censored. Oh, ho, ho, ho. Interesting, Valen. JB says what's going on in the Congo is linked to Israel. That's right. JB did a stream about that earlier. You guys should check that out. Ravina said only 2 million of us left. I think Ravina's talking about indigenous people. Gamer says Roger Waters and some other celebrities are standing up for Palestinians. Yeah, Susan Sarandon. Me and JP did a stream about it on RBN where we talked about where people were on either side of the issue. A kid says Sabby, the movies condition the world to be an American centric and Eurocentric. The human condition is thought by movies more so than anything else. The age of the internet has eroded that narrative. Interesting. Interesting. Let me make sure I get the next one up here. There's 58, right about there. Okay. We're going to go to this story here with Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks, who's also now running for president through the Democratic Party, but we all know that's not going anywhere, versus Rabbi Shmuley on Piers Morgan's show. This is a very heated debate. If you wanted to get some popcorn, go grab some real quick. Go grab some and bring it back. Go grab some and bring it back. Because this is a doozy. So prepare yourself for this one. This debate here with Cenk Uygur and Rabbi Shmuley over should there be a ceasefire?
Well, welcome to both of you. Cenk, let me start with you. Many people are calling for a ceasefire. Queen Rania of Jordan, Angelina Jolie, Arab leaders, and so on. I presume you would agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that they've murdered enough Palestinian civilians. And even Netanyahu in an interview with ABC News said, now that we're on the ground, we're finally pressuring Hamas on hostages. Oh, so the 7,000 bombs you dropped were totally useless and collective punishment and your attempt to murder civilians on purpose as some sort of sick vengeance. So please stop the murders, ceasefire right now.
Rabbi Shmuley, your response.
Before he responds, I just want to point out something. So yes, Cenk Uygur is correct to call out the ceasefire. But what's really interesting, again, Cenk Uygur is running for president through the Democratic Party. Cenk Uygur, your network has heavily been supporting, obviously, the Democratic Party. And what I'm interested to see is that when Cenk loses, because let's be real, Cenk is not going to get the DNC nomination for the Democratic Party, is Cenk Uygur going to tell people to support Joe Biden? Because if Cenk Uygur tells people to support Joe Biden, just like they told people to support Hillary Clinton, then I'm going to call bullshit on this, Cenk. because Joe Biden is complicit with the genocide of the Palestinian people. So if you really care about the lives of the Palestinian people, Cenk, you should encourage your viewers, your millions of viewers over at TYT, to support the candidates that are actually correct on this issue, not the candidates that want to continue the massacre that's happening over there in Gaza.
Cenk is polling in the Democratic presidential primaries at 0%, nothing. He has a greater likelihood of being elected the new king of France. And don't interrupt me, please. And the reason.
So this part was kind of funny because he said he's polling at 0. He has a chance of being elected the king of France. But what was also funny is when he said, "Don't interrupt me," that was like a delayed response. It was like, okay.
Is that the American people are decent. They understand that Cenk's anti-Semitism, which he has voiced on your show repeatedly, calling Jews genocidaires, and this is the eve of Kristallnacht, the 85th anniversary of the start of the Holocaust. He would deny the Jewish people the only dignity left to us, that we were victims of genocide, and he would say that we are the Nazis, we are the Gestapo, for simply wanting to defend ourselves against the brutality and the savagery of Hamas. Cenk, you'll have your turn. Just show some decency. If you're not going to show it to my people, show it to me and show it to the viewers of the show.
Stop. Here he goes playing the victim card. Have some decency if you're not going to show it to me or my people or whatever. First of all, I will say it's really funny. I got to defend Cenk here, but Cenk actually did not say that. So Cenk actually was on Piers Morgan's show before. I already saw that. And so Rabbi Shmuley here, he's exaggerating, he's lying, and this is what he's been known to do, right? This is the guy that RFK Jr. is hanging out with. This guy is basically going to smear anyone as anti-Semitic if you are against what he feels should happen in reference to this issue.
But who is surprised that a man? Who is surprised that a man the name of whose podcast is Young Turks, who perpetrated the Armenian genocide? The Young Turks is like calling your podcast the Young Nazis, the Young Gestapo. They killed.
You know, that part right there. This is cringe for me because I don't want to have to agree with Rabbi Shmuley. But he took it there to that level. And I've heard other people make that exact same point about Cenk Uygur calling TYT the Young Turks. And you do have Anna Kasparian as one of the lead co-hosts, a part of TYT, who is Armenian, and the reference to the Armenian genocide. So I've heard people say that before, like, why did he name it the Young Turks? Like, why would you do that? So it just, like, when I heard him say that, I was like, oh, that's I can't argue with that. I cannot argue with that.
Killed 1.5 to 2 million Armenians between 1915 and 1918. The Armenian community has begged Cenk to change the name of his show. For the first half of his life, he was a complete Armenian genocide denier. Then he changed. Now he is a Holocaust denier because he is saying that the Jews are engaged in a genocide of the Palestinians. Now, which nation? How can there be 1.8 million Arab citizens?
Rabbi Shmuley, I'm going to go to Cenk. You said some very strong things about Cenk. You can now respond, Cenk.
I don't know if that's true about the Armenian community. I'd have to look into that. I'm not sure if they've asked him to change the name of the network. So I have to get back to you about that one.
Yeah, you should never have this guy on air. Everything he said is a lie. I don't deny the Holocaust. That's insanity. And in terms of the Armenian genocide, there is a powerful analogy there. Why was it a genocide? And yes, it was a genocide. Why? Because they moved and displaced so many people and killed civilians on the way. What is Israel doing? Moving and displacing millions of people and killing innocent civilians. It is the
Yes. So this was a good point. This was a really good point.
Exact definition of a genocide. So I think the Jewish people are an amazing people and their culture is beautiful. And I don't tolerate any anti-Semitism. But I think that the occupation is decaying the moral core of Israel. How long are you going to oppress these people?
But Cenk,
and I know this guy, all he wants to do is an ad hominem attack. He's a liar. And you could tell exactly what kind of indecent human being he is. But the main reason he's doing it is to avoid the topic. When are you going to stop murdering Palestinians and cheerleading it?
Okay.
If you're talking about genocide, you're the one right now doing the genocide.
May I respond?
So I got to agree with Cenk on this. I know, Victor. Victor says based. Cenk, I know. Like, that is a good question. It's a very powerful question. When are you going to stop oppressing these people? Yeah. How do you respond to that?
May I respond?
Yes. Go ahead. More lies. Go ahead.
You know, I've spent my life debating people. Whenever someone starts using personal names and screaming like a lunatic, they're losing the debate. Let me remain factual.
You're the one
First
who
of all,
made up things.
The Palestinians were offered a state in 1936 in the Peel Commission. They rejected it. They were offered a state in 1947, the UN Partition Plan. They rejected it. They were offered a state in 1967 after Israel conquered Judea and Samaria and the West Bank. They rejected it. They were offered a state in 2000, Yasser Arafat, Ehud Barak. They rejected it. They were offered a state with Ehud Olmert 2008. They rejected it. Israel unilaterally withdrew from Gaza in 2005, and they did not create a state. In fact, where were you, Cenk, when you say...
Pause. So you know what I noticed when he lists off all those different years? He skips over 2002. Now, why is that significant? In 2002, there was the Arab Peace Initiative, which also would have given some type of independence and self-determination to the Palestinian people. However, it was the state of Israel that did not agree to it. The Palestinian people agreed to it. Even Hamas had agreement to it, to the Arab Peace Initiative. And I talked about this before on the show. I'll feel free to put the article in the chat as well. But the state of Israel opposed it. So you notice all those years that he listed, notice he skipped over 2002. Also, he points out anything that happened before 1948. Remember, this whole oppression started in 1948 when they started kicking Palestinians and moving them like off of the land. That goes all the way back to 1948. So why is he mentioning the years in the 30s? Why is he mentioning about, well, they were offered this in the 30s, yada, yada. Why would they have accepted that in the 30s when there was no threat or fear of people taking their land and kicking them off of the land at that point in time? That's just something to think about.
That you care about Palestinian children when Hamas stole the highest rate of per capita international foreign aid, larger than the Marshall Plan, from Palestinian children, did not build schools for them, did not build hospitals, took all the money to buy bombs and to build a network of tunnels, which is larger than the New York subway system. Where were you then? Why did you only come up now? In fact, when Bashar al-Assad killed 600,000 children, Arab children, when he gassed them with mustard gas, my organization took out full-page New York Times ads to protect them from sarin gas. Where were you then? You don't care about Arab children. You are a Jew hater, defined as someone who only wants to lie and say that the Jews are genocidaires. And don't try to cancel me and say that I shouldn't be on. You're not a producer of this show. Because you are ignorant of the facts and ignorant of the history does not mean that you can cancel my voice.
Cenk, your response.
Let me pause there for just a second. One thing I do want to add, again, I can't believe I have to defend Cenk here, but that's actually incorrect. When Rabbi Shmuley says, where were you before October 7th? They've discussed this issue on TYT years ago. So it's not like they never talked about this issue before. In fact, going back to when I remember Hassan Piker, when he used to be a part of TYT, you know, he's spoken out about this for a long time, has been a strong advocate of that. I got my issues with Hassan because he be tripping sometimes. But other than that, he is good on this particular issue. So that's actually not true what Rabbi Shmuley there is saying. I can't believe I got to defend TYT. This is wild.
Okay, so first of all, this guy is a full-blown bigot. He's one of the most racist people I have ever seen, does not value Palestinian lives at all. And everything he said about me is 100% untrue. I was vicious in my criticism of Bashar al-Assad. I've criticized Hamas over and over again, and I think what they did in the attack against Israel was reprehensible. But for God's sake, how long are you going to occupy these people? For me, The idea of Israelis and Palestinians or Muslims or Jews being different is absurd. Those are just stupid labels that we put on people. They're all human beings. I value the Israeli life just as much as I value the Palestinian life. We're all human. Stop using these nonsense labels
Cenk, let me ask you a
kill
question.
each other.
Cenk,
So I will say also too on TYT, he did criticize Hamas as well. That is also true. Yo, this is wild. I feel like I'm in an episode of The Twilight Zone. The fact that I actually have to defend Cenk here. That's how bad, that's how horrible Rabbi Shmuley is.
All this guy wants to do is more murder of Palestinians.
Cenk, let me ask
when
you.
When are you going to let them go?
Cenk, let me ask you a question. You mentioned genocide there. What Hamas is actually in its charter dedicated to doing is the purest personification of genocide. Well, it is. They want to see the eradication of Israel, and they proved on October the 7th they will kill as many Jews as they can possibly get their hands on. So that is pure genocide. What Israel is doing in return, I don't think meets the category of genocide. Right, because they don't want to get rid of every Palestinian. They don't want to kill every Palestinian.
No,
they want to
that's
kill
not
every
their
Hamas
standard.
terrorist. Now, there are legitimate question marks about how they're going about this and about the civilian casualties. But there is a moral distinction between what Hamas is dedicated to doing and what Israel is dedicated to doing, isn't there?
No, Piers Morgan is 100% incorrect. Netanyahu has made this statement so himself. He does not care about the Palestinian people. They see no different. We've seen multiple interviews from IDF soldiers that have made this statement as well. They see no different between Hamas and the Palestinian people. That is on record. Those interviews have been on CNN, MSNBC, etc. So Piers Morgan is wrong.
No. First of all, Hamas is a bunch of idiots. They should take that stuff out of their charter. All it does is hurt the Palestinian cause. I agree. There's no call for it. It's dumb and it's immoral. But Hamas claims that they would like to do these things, and from time to time they do these attacks that are horrible and they should never do. But Israel actually kills Palestinians, actually occupies Palestine, actually denies the Palestinians a state. So there's this absurd talk of like, oh, if Hamas was super powerful, they might deny Israel its existence. Except Israel does exist. And the Palestinian state does not exist because Israel is blocking their state. So stop using, and I'm not saying to you, Piers, but this propaganda, hold on.
You know, Cenk, you and I.
It's like blaming the slave instead of blaming the master. You know, instead of blaming the government that is controlling the resources, the air, the land, the sea, the people the state of Israel that's actually in power, instead of blaming who is actually in power, is like they're blaming the people that are oppressed.
Are almost the same age, and I'm actually quite worried for how upset you get on TV. You got to protect your health. You're just kind of losing it. Now, calm down.
Because I'm upset that you keep advocating
when
for
you
the
keep
murder
on
of
saying,
civilians.
Cenk, you have
like
to
a
stop
terrorist.
yelling. You have to stop screaming, and you need to know the facts. The Palestinians were offered a state 7 times, and they rejected it 7 times. Bill Clinton told Yasser Arafat in 2000, you have made me a failure as president because Israel was giving you 97% of Judea and Samaria and the old city of Jerusalem. And Ehud Barak even offered the Temple Mount, the holy.
I don't know if we should be taking what Bill Clinton has said to be accurate, but okay.
Site in Judaism, and the Palestinians rejected it. You simply don't know the history. Read a book. In fact, read a Wikipedia article before you get on TV. Number 2, you know, you made a very good point before, Piers, that Winston Churchill is the greatest British statesman and hero of the 20th century. Let's remember, when Churchill was faced with a genocidal threat of the Nazis, you know what he did, which Israel would never consider doing? He laid waste to 70% of Dresden, Essen, Cologne, Berlin. He eviscerated Germany and turned it into a parking lot, murdering about 6 million German civilians.
Winston Churchill was also a rabid racist. I'm not sure that's the best person you want to really be talking about here.
Has never even considered doing 1,000th of that. And FDR acquiesced to it, and he's considered our greatest president of the 20th century. And then
No. He's not. See, this is the thing. This is the thing I've tried to say multiple times before. Okay. We cannot let mainstream media speak for us. We cannot continue to let that happen. You see what happens? They get people like him there during these debates to make these statements that FDR is considered the greatest president of according to who? According to you. I wasn't even alive when FDR was president. Were you? So we got to think about these things. We got to be careful about who is controlling the narrative here. So it's just, to me, it's just, let's continue. We're going to go back to what he said about that part right there again. Hold on.
He laid waste to 70% of Dresden, Essen, Cologne, Berlin. He eviscerated Germany and turned it into a parking lot, murdering about 6 million German civilians. Israel has never even considered doing 1,000th of that. And FDR acquiesced to it, and he's considered our greatest president of the 20th century. And then Harry Truman dropped 2 atomic bombs on Nagasaki, Hiroshima. So and Israel has nuclear weapons, has never.
And those things were bad. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. Is he trying to do some type of oppression war? Are we doing oppression Olympics? That's what this is about? So-and-so did this. So-and-so did that. So-and-so did this. So it's okay for the state of Israel to do these things because look at what FDR did. Look at what Churchill did. Look at what Harry Truman did. Those aren't my heroes, Rabbi Shmuley. I don't look up to those men. You see, the American history books will have you believe differently. They will make you think that this is who you should admire, who you should look up to. I don't look up to those people. I look up to the people in my community. That's who I look up to. I look up to my parents. I don't look up to these older dudes that were president, that were around, that were alive before I was even born, son. This is exactly what Dr. Shiva was referring to when he said they will pick our heroes for us. The U.S. government, the mainstream media, they will pick our heroes for us. They will look at us and tell us who our heroes are supposed to be. You got to pick your own heroes. And word to the wise, if mainstream media or the U.S. government is telling you that someone is a hero, chances are those motherfuckers are not a hero.
Considered doing that. Israel opened up.
Well, they've actually. Okay, let me come at you, Rabbi.
I have one question.
I want to come back to you on 2 points.
Simple question, Cenk.
I want to ask you a question, Rabbi.
Call Winston Churchill a war criminal on this show today. Will you call Churchill a war criminal?
All right, Cenk, answer that question.
Okay, so Rabbi Shmuley, if you're actually a rabbi, the standards of history have changed. So the Mongols went into Baghdad and killed every man, woman, and child, killed 800,000 people, the largest city in the world. Now, we don't live by those standards anymore. And right now, if a modern British prime minister or American president advocated for dropping a nuclear bomb in Japan or killing 70% of the people that live in Dresden, you're damn right I'd call him a war criminal. It's a different situation today than it was in the past. And so what you're saying is, hey, we only murdered 10,000 civilians, and wantonly and recklessly, and we only did a partial genocide, so we're not as guilty. I'm not buying it at all.
Rabbi Shmuley, I want to ask you a question. Okay, hang on, Rabbi, I want to ask you a question.
The oppression Olympics.
Question, which is the unique scenario in Gaza is that nearly half of the civilian population are children. They have nothing to do with this. They're not politicians. They're not in Hamas. They're not terrorists. They're not military. They're kids. And they are in their thousands being killed here. And I ask you really, is there any limit, you as a rabbi, of the number of children who need to be killed to get rid of Hamas here, or is there no limit?
Of course there's a limit. We mourn the death of every Arab, Muslim, Palestinian child as if a Jewish child died. They are...
Nah, bruh. No, you don't. No. What did Netanyahu say? What did Netanyahu say in the interview on CNN? He don't care.
absolutely equal before God. That's why Israel withdrew completely and utterly in 2005, something that Cenk will not even acknowledge. There isn't one Israeli soldier, there wasn't until this new invasion, because of the attack on Sderot, I went to those places, Pierce, I was there 2 weeks ago. I saw the blood caked on the walls, congealed to 3 or 4 inches. I saw the knives that were used to murder entire families. We saw the place where Thai, not Jewish, Thai farm workers who were growing pumpkins were beheaded. We saw the body of Shani Luke, and I spoke to her mother, Ricarda, who was taken naked. These are religious men in Hamas, taken naked in her underwear and her bra, her dead body, these necrophilia savages. We saw all that. How many Palestinian children need to die? God forbid, not one. All Hamas needs to do is let the civilian population go south. Stop using them as human shields. Hamas wants these Palestinian.
The Palestinian people have been moving south. We covered that on this show recently. I showed you the trek that they're walking south, etc. They're still being attacked there. CNN got so bad that CNN actually had to admit that they were still being attacked when the move to the south, the refugee camps, the hospitals. So they had to take the babies off of incubators because another hospital with no electricity. So you don't care about those kids. I don't even know if you even care about the Israeli kids either. I think this guy's just someone that just wants to be famous, to keep it real. This is the same guy that was in the same cahoots with Michael Jackson. This guy was friends with Michael Jackson. He was on a freaking reality TV show. I'm starting to think he don't even really care about what's happening to any of them. The Palestinian people, the Israeli people, I don't think he care about what's happened with the Israeli people either. I don't think he really care about what happened to those hostages. I think this guy just trying to be famous. I think he jumped onto this shtick. I think he found a way to make money off of it. He wrote books about it. He did TV shows about it. And now you then hopped on to RFK Jr.'s back, okay? That's what I think this guy is.
Children to die. Every Palestinian child to Hamas is a bulletproof
Okay,
vest.
but you said
they exist for no other reason than to humiliate Israel.
Okay.
Let them go south and be safe.
Okay.
But Hamas wants them.
Rabbi Shmuley,
it's Hamas's fault. It's Hamas's fault. It's Hamas's fault.
Rabbi Shmuley, you did say there's a limit. What is that limit?
Pierce, it's hard to put a number on how many people Hamas is prepared to allow.
Oh, God. There is a limit, but I don't know what that number is supposed to be, guys.
To die in order to destroy the state of Israel. Remember, Hamas's motto is from the sea, from sea to sea, Israel will be, Palestine will be free. It's the annihilation of every Jew. Iran calls for it openly, a second Holocaust. This is the eve of Kristallnacht. I don't want to put a number on how many Palestinian children. I want a ceasefire right now. Hamas must.
Now he says he wants a ceasefire right now. Okay. Do you see the contradiction with this guy? He changes his tune up depending on whose show he's on. Now I would say he want a ceasefire now. But they'll say the opposite when he's with RFK Jr. Paid actor.
Surrender unconditionally, just like FDR and just like Churchill demanded of the Nazis, unconditional surrender, release the hostages. We get a ceasefire right now. Cenk, let me ask.
Why does he continue to bring up these ancient dudes that are no longer alive? Most of us weren't even born at the time that they were alive. Why does he keep bringing up what these people did? Why you keep bringing up what Churchill did? What FDR did? It's 2023.
You to call for a ceasefire by having Hamas, who you think actually cares about the Palestinian population, to announce their surrender. Call for their surrender right now. They launched this attack unprovoked against Israel. They slaughtered 1,400 people. They are holding little babies whose diapers need to be changed as hostages. Call for them to surrender unconditionally.
All right, Cenk, final word.
Whatever, dude. All I'm going to say is this. This did not begin October 7th. This is about occupation, land theft, colonization, oppression, and that was not started by Hamas. Going all the way back to 1948. I told you guys before, again, I cannot be moved on this issue. What a mess. What a mess. Ay. Let me go to some of the comments here. We will do call in tonight. Thank you so much for the super chat, Courtney. FDR, one of the greatest presidents, according to whom? Jamil Hill and AOC. They did say this. Yeah, see what I'm saying? When we let other people like speak for us and be our heroes. A kid said, Sabby, please ask Norm Finkelstein to come onto your show to share the history of what Palestine has offered multiple times and Israel was not willing to negotiate because they want all of the land. That's right, a kid. JB says, damn, Sabs, don't make me agree with Cenk. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, that was wild, man. That was a wild ride. All right. We're just going to finish up Wyoming. If you did not have a chance to do so, please be sure to hit that like button, guys. And then we will be heading over to call in actually in just a couple of minutes. But let me go ahead and finish Wyoming here as well. So we are still continuing the ballot initiatives. Wyoming was introduced a couple of days ago. I want to get to this particular part here. The supermajority requirements. All Wyoming measures require affirmative votes from a majority of those casting a ballot in the general election, not just of those casting a vote on the measure. This also applies to legislatively referred constitutional amendments. In other words, leaving it blank is equal to saying no. So if 100 people voted in the election, but 10 left the initiative question blank, but 49 voted yes, and 41 voted no, then the measure is defeated because those 10 that left the initiative question blank but voted on politicians and other initiatives are counted as a no vote and would get added to the 41 who voted no, thus defeating the measure. That's important to know. So for those of you in Wyoming, don't leave ballot initiative questions blank. Always put something. Legislative alteration. The Wyoming state legislature may not repeal an approved measure for 2 years after it takes effect. It may be amended at any time by a simple majority vote. 2 years is not enough. The fact that the government can amend it at any time and the fact that they can't use the CBI process to ratify their own amendments makes them passing a law useless. Reattempting an initiative. Once a measure has been defeated at the ballot box, no measure substantially the same as the one defeated may be filed for verification within 5 years. Every state is different in reference to this. Massachusetts, we have limitations too. So I know we did not pass ranked choice voting in 2020. We should be at the point or getting ready to be at the point, at least by 2024, to be able to reintroduce that measure again. But it depends on the state. So in some states, you have to wait maybe 2 or 3 years. In other states, it could be longer. Roger added a note here that said, man, between this and the previous commentary, their government really hates direct democracy. That is interesting. So let's go to the first one, Wyoming constitutional amendment, local government stock investing amendment, where a yes vote supported allowing the Wyoming state legislature to provide by law for local governments, county, city, township, town, school district, or other political subdivision to invest funds in stocks and equities and requiring a 2/3 vote of the legislator to establish or increase the percentage of funds a local government could invest. This measure was ratified by 56.78%. Let me move forward here. So it says here, the following elected officials sponsored the amendment. It's all Republicans and 1 Democrat. So that's interesting. That is interesting. I wonder if the Democrat in Wyoming is more like a moderate, probably more like a moderate Democrat. A note here says attaching state funds to speculative behavior on Wall Street sounds a bit risky. Wyoming is one of 9 states that doesn't have state income tax. This is why you will see possibly risky behavior like this being done, because they know they have to find a way to finance government operations somehow. That's interesting. And we'll move on to this measure, which failed. Wyoming Constitutional Amendment Judicial Retirement Age Measure. A yes vote supported increasing the judicial retirement age from 70 to 75 for state Supreme Court justices and district court justices. This measure failed by 60.81%. So they wanted them actually to keep that seat, be able to keep that spot longer. That's interesting. One of the arguments from State Representative Barry Crago, I just think that it's time we do that. We have a lot of good judges that are forced to retire at 70. They are not ready for retirement, nor should they be. They're still doing a great job for our state. It will actually be a money saver because we won't be putting them on a pension plan as early. See what you guys see? This all comes back to money. That's what this is really about. We won't be putting them on a pension plan as early. I'm hopeful we're able to get that passed on the ballot and raise that for our judges, because it has been much needed for a while. If just those 8 were able to serve an extra 5 years, the retirement system benefits by a gain of nearly $4 million, which is a huge savings to taxpayers. And that will only grow and grow and grow as more judges are able to serve that long. Interesting. Here is one of the oppositions to it. I'm not going to read this whole thing. This is too long. But it basically says over the next 15 years, Amendment B will mandate retirement for only 3 women out of 13 district and Supreme Court judges, 23%. In other words, 77% of the immediate beneficiaries of Amendment B will be men. Supporters of Amendment B have told stories about older judges forced in retirement too early. But where are the stories of brilliant mid-career women lawyers? Interesting. There was no money spent to support or oppose this measure, no campaign money spent. And a note here from Roger. And so we have to come to the end of the ballot initiatives that we voted on in the last 10 months. However, B still have 6 states whose ballot initiatives will be voted on in coming months. Any of you live in or know those who live in Colorado, Louisiana, Maine, New York, that's Roger, Ohio, and Texas. We are going to be informing you next, so get ready. Sabrina, Louisiana got really slick. Wait till you see what they did. Right. And so we've come to the end of the ballot measures that were on the ballot in 2022. So we will now be going into the ones that will be on the ballot for 2024. So I'm excited and pumped about that. And let's do the damn thing. We will do call in. I'm going to take a quick break and I'll be right back. I'm sure you guys got some things to discuss.
All right. This is the part of the show where we give Sabrina a quick break before we jump over to call-in. You can do call-in on the browser. You can do call-in on your cell phone. It's still alive, the call-in. We heard it was going to go away, but it hasn't. But I put the link in the chat if anyone wants to get a head start. And Sabrina usually adds a link to that to the chat, like as the pinned chat. But let's take a peek at what our call-in will look like tonight, just to get a little head start on things. Here we are. Call-in 135. She's done 135 of these. Can you believe it? Aaron Mate removed, Jill Stein, and more. So you can talk about those things, or you can talk about really anything you want on call-in. And certainly if any of you have been on call-in, you know that people do talk about anything and everything on Callin. And sometimes you can get the inside scoop on there. But while Sabrina's having her little break, let's see. I saw one super chat. I don't think she hit this one. Came in from Victor Levan. Thanks for the super chat. Wouldn't you think that if the children were shields, then Israel wouldn't be killing them, right? Yep. And yeah, I mean that Rabbi Shmuley. I mean, you can certainly tell his whole game is to just keep throwing stuff out there. There's a rhetorical method I heard once called a Gish Gallop, I think is the name of it. And it was from a guy who would do debates like this, who was named Gish, I think. And the idea was when you're doing that kind of a debate, if you're not an honest actor, and if you're not acting in good faith, the methodology in the debating is you just keep putting stuff out there. You just say, oh, the Hamas is this, and they were offered this, and you just be relentless at it, and then. The methodology is that if you're that relentless and that continuous at it, that it overwhelms the debate and everyone listening and your opponent. Yeah, it's called I believe it's called a Gish Gallop, and it was just named after a guy that would do that. And the idea is to make it so that the facts don't matter, right? That you basically win the debate by just overwhelming it. I did notice old Shmuley there, he did kind of flag towards the end of it, and it's I think it's kind of a tough situation because the facts are so obvious, and that of what's happening, how this is a genocide, and 4,000 plus children being killed is kind of a hard thing to defend, you would think, but there's defense of it, and we have people, some of the so-called progressive Democrats being treated as heroes because they're calling for a ceasefire, as if this is some great accomplishment, or some great position, brave, incredible position. What they should be calling, what anyone of any good conscience and acting in good faith should be calling for is real justice for the Palestinians. The idea of going from the river to the sea is the concept of, and I get the quote right, unlike Shmuley, you couldn't remember the damn quote, but the idea of Palestine will be free it's not that Israel will be wiped off or certain people will be killed or something. The idea is that you have true justice for every person who's there. I mean, that's the basic concept. And so simply calling for a ceasefire is like weak sauce. It's like calling for Medicare for all, and you should be calling for health care for all, and just real health care. And just calling for a ceasefire is, it's better than the opposite, I guess. It maybe means you're not a complete monster, but people should be calling for justice and equality and rights, and for everyone. The power dynamic is hugely important. I mean, the Palestinians have basically no power. Israel has all the power in the U.S., and so it's really up to the powerful to make things right. I wanted to bring up quickly here, there was a Caitlin Johnstone recently on this too, and I always love talking about Caitlin Johnstone because she gets it right. And yeah, she was talking about this one. I'll show tone policing opposition to genocide, and she's got old Chris Coons there, and this is the quiet car. And I don't think we quite got to it in the video, but I think at the end he actually says, "I'm a senator, and this is the quiet car." And yeah, the arrogance of these Congress critters is kind of amazing. But yeah, she kind of describes the incident, and and he's all, "Please stop." And then like at the end, like she really hits it here, where and I definitely recommend reading the whole article and really everything that Caitlin writes. But but yeah, I'll just read her last paragraph. And of course, another reason the powerful place so much emphasis on politeness and etiquette whenever they are confronted is because they are all acutely aware that there are a whole lot more of us than there are of them, and that people can decide at any time to stop playing by the rules and simply tear down the ruling power structures which commit mass atrocities in their name. As long as everyone's worried about being perceived as sufficiently well-mannered, the people will never awaken to their true power. And this is something that Caitlin hits on a lot, is the whole idea of narrative management, how narrative management is so important to the ruling class and this whole system, because there simply are, so many more of us than there are of them. And let me clear this off. And hit this. And like I said, this is where we give Sabrina a break before we go over to Colin. And other thing I wanted to hit, we were talking on the first story about the Uber drivers. And let me even this up. There we go. And one of the things that, I always like to put out there is that if we had, when it comes to things like Uber and gig drivers and whatnot, if we had a decent society, a decent system where you had housing for all, healthcare for all, food for all the basic things looked after, where you don't have to work or starve, and work it became a choice, then gig work would be an okay thing. Right? People would just be doing it. But where you have to do these things to just keep from starving and losing your house and your health insurance, that's really what brings in all the desperation and all of the ridiculous aspects of this. So we need to imagine, I think we really need to be imagining that better world and demanding it.
That's right. All good points. We are heading on over to call-in. We're heading over to call-in. It won't be a late call-in because I actually am going to be on Rising tomorrow. So just FYI, but we got some things to talk about. This is episode 135, Aaron Mate removed, Jill Stein and more. I put Jill Stein there because I know we didn't get a chance to talk about Jill Stein's interview and stuff like that. So you can talk about that as you want, but you guys know how we do this. We talk about a lot of stuff on call in, but anywho, that link is pinned to the top of the chat. So I will see you guys over there. You know how we do this, and stay tuned, guys. 2024, I got some things coming. For the show. So just wait for it. I think you're going to like some stuff. So have a good night. Keep up the fight.